Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Dog Trainers Podcast. This is episode 7, Why Dog Training is Important. Stick around.
Welcome to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers, for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend. Episode 7, Why Dog Training is Important. Welcome back, everybody. This is Brent, and that guy's Mariano, and this is episode 7 of the Pod Trainers Podcast. Today, we're going to be answering a very common question that we find out online. It is, why is dog training important? Now, as dog trainers, we have a huge opinion on this. But for those of you who are maybe on the fence, or those of you who are interested in just learning more about the field, you may catch on to a couple nuances that you didn't really know as part of dog training. So I guess to kind of answer this question, Mariano, let's go ahead and start off with like every profession, every service comes from, solving some type of problem.
Right.
So what problems would you say exist, and what do dog trainers, how does dog training affect and help those problems?
Well, a few of the biggest problems that we see, it's funny that some of the problems were bred in being potential solutions to other problems, but they kind of steamrolled into a problem of their own. And that would be something like information overload, because
Right.
we have access to so many videos and different training methods or websites. And it's not that it's wrong to have that stuff. It's just without guidance, people can easily lose themselves in it and then just decide, you know what, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything.
Right. And just
Um,
to add to that real quick, like if you guys think of, if those of you who are listening right now, 20 years ago, there was one, maybe two methods of dog training. Right now, you can go on YouTube and get confused out of your mind of what dog training is.
oh yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. Within our lifetime, things have changed dramatically.
Yeah, some strong opinions on all sides, and I think that the best advice that anyone can give you is, number one, do what makes the most sense for you and your dog, and of course that's within reason. I would definitely say to stick to a method, whatever the method, that is tried and true, and we know that they work, and we know that they're effective and they're safe and everything like that. But do what's right for you. That's
Right.
probably the best advice any dog trainer could give you. To get back to the problems, though, I think the biggest problem, the original problem, is just there's a lack of understanding. People either don't understand why a dog does a certain thing, or they know what the dog's doing and get why, like a dog wanting to chase a squirrel, but they don't exactly know how to go about explaining to the dog that they don't like this or that it's unacceptable.
Right. Stuff like digging, stuff like chewing, stuff like hunting, stuff like barking, like there was a time where all of these behaviors were actually sought after. But really, part of our dog training job is to understand animal behavior in a way that we could explain and then teach you eventually how to deal with it.
Yeah, it's a funny thing because, when we talk about lack of understanding, that can go a lot of different ways, because even from owner to owner, when we talk about things like some
Mhm.
things even today are highly sought after, there's hunting dogs that definitely have great jobs to do and they do them well, or protection dogs or whatever the case. But when the dog doesn't know what their job is, or the owner doesn't know how to give a dog a job and hold them to it, then we
Right.
start to have kind of these misfires between things. And that's when it's our job to step in, figure out what needs to happen in order to get things where they need to go, and then we
Right.
get to work.
Love that. I love that. What other problems can you think of?
I mean, I can give a couple examples to problems very quickly. So here's a problem. I just did a lesson a little while ago today. I actually think this is the same client that I spoke to you guys about last time, episode 6. So
Mm.
it's a very reactive dog. It's a hunting dog. It's a mix of a coonhound and border collie and a few other things, and super high prey drive, super high, a willingness and an energy to just control things, and a focus like you wouldn't believe. And so the problem is the dog is very sweet and very loving of the mom, but he's very dominant and he's very controlling and he's very possessive. So people walk in the house and it's all bets are off. He's barking, he's lunging in the crate, out of the crate, on a leash. If he's on the couch hanging out and they try to kick him off, it's a problem with growling. And that's a
Right.
huge misunderstanding on the on dog and the owner's part. So today I met with them, and with the work that we've already done, I was explaining to them how a lot of our work together is going to be building this mutual understanding between you two, so that you can start to explain to your dog in a way that he gets. That's the key thing here, in a way that the dog understands that this is not acceptable.
Right. Right. I totally get that. And so kind of what you're saying is there's a misunderstanding between both parts. And I think in all these problems it goes both ways. It goes dog to owner, owner to dog. And we're going to see that whether it's a lack of understanding from species to species, We speak different languages. Dogs aren't born understanding English. And dogs are not necessarily the best at developing relationships, and so funny, neither are humans, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I guess problem wise, we start seeing this rift between two separate species that are actually very drawn to each other. And this is how it's been since the domestication of wolves.
Yeah, it's always been an interesting topic, and I actually wanted to hear your thoughts on why dog training is important because I'll definitely riff on it a bit with you, but I think that the way that you explain it is something that I found very like informative and entertaining. So if you could, why is dog training important?
Oh man, it's a multi-layered question, but I mean, other than just solving some of the surface problems that we run across as dog owners and dog people, or just animal lovers in general, dog training, in my opinion, has a lot of little nuances to it that definitely helped me get through certain developmental stages of my life. But then I didn't know it was dog training, and then when you become a professional, certain things are actually techniques that people practice and teach on purpose, right? But I would say the first thing is developing communication, right? Dog training is really about developing understanding and communication between two dogs or between two species, right? So we don't naturally speak dog, and dogs don't naturally speak human. And in essence, in dog training, what we're doing is we're trying to bridge this gap. We're trying to understand their language a little bit, but then we're also trying to teach them our language and expectations so that we can have kind of a symbiotic relationship, and in essence have an effective relationship with a member of a different species, right?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry. Well, I noticed that a funny thing that I kind of tell people is like humans speak emotion and dogs speak body language, and there's this huge disconnect. Um, One thing that I kind of wanted to direct you toward though, because I thought it was kind of cool, was again, this is fresh in my mind because of my lesson earlier, but people need to understand that dogs and people have very different needs and wants, and especially when we consider specific breeds, because people get stuck with that kind of stuff too. Like I got a Great Dane. Why isn't he super athletic and energetic? And um,
Right, because he's 150 pounds.
I
That's
re-
why.
right. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts a little bit on how important is it for owners to understand the difference in needs, what a dog needs versus what the owner needs, and how can they go about kind of meshing those in the middle.
Right, and I think just like any relationship, right? Like we run across relationships with significant others, with employers, with colleagues at work, and the reality of it is dog training, or at least dog training specifically for your dog, is learning how to find a balance in your relationship between what the dog needs and what the owner needs, right? So, if you have a big dog like a Great Dane, there's going to be certain things that you can't develop or won't be able to do with that dog that you could do with a Chihuahua or a different type of dog, right? So I guess for dog owners, dog training is important to also understand how you need to kind of customize what your expectations, what your needs, desires, all that stuff is based on all of the variables looked at as the big picture, right? So where you live, what kind of dog you have, all those things. And our job as dog trainers to really help you guys come up in essence, I kind of always call it relationship counseling. So we're trying to see, okay, you have a partner, which is your dog, and then you have you, and these are your needs, these are the dog's needs and wants, these are your needs and wants, and how do we find a way for those things to work in harmony with one another, so that way the dog can be happy, and the people who own the dog or take care of the dog can also be happy and live long happy lives with
Right.
great memories and things like that. Um, so in essence, dog training is important because we want to develop strong communication skill, but most importantly, what we start seeing, it is a relationship building tool, right? I always joke, as I said, we're relationship counselors for dogs and their pets. That's the gist of it. That's what dog trainers do. Now, I guess how we do this, there's a bunch of different ways. I'm going to shoot it over to Mariano real quick. Go ahead and break down, I guess, what you would consider to be your top five. What is dog training in
Yeah.
general?
Perfect. So that's what I was hoping to get to next, because people, just to reiterate, is once people understand why it's important, that's the question you get next. Like, okay, I get that, but like how now? Right? So we've broken down dog training into five different segments here. So routine development, communication, behavioral development, socialization, and relationship development. Now,
Totally.
routine development, that's something that you can do. It's almost training when you're not training. So an example being, if I have a client who their dog has this habit of staring, they sit on the couch, stare out the window, and just yap at everybody and everything that comes by. When the owners
Hmm.
are home, they can practice much healthier habits for the dog so that they let go of that like incessant, obsession to just bark at everything and defend the house. But when they're
Right.
not home, maybe there's a better sort of routine, something that they can do to avoid that behavior so that it doesn't continue to feed itself and just make training harder or longer than it needs to be. So that would be something like crate training, or even just
Right.
separating the dog from the room with the big old window, or, there's so many different times or options when eliminating possibilities are just so much easier, so much safer, healthier. And when you have the time and, and can effectively and, and appropriately train a dog, even under these certain distractions, because it's good to address these things directly when the dog is ready. But when you can't, routine is a huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
Communication, that's, I want to say maybe 90% of it. And Brent and I have a joke. I'm sure every dog trainer has this joke that like 99% of dog training is people training,
Yep.
because dogs
Sure.
do, it's funny, right? Because dogs do communicate with you, but they communicate with you like a dog communicates with you. So people don't always get it. And people
Right.
have
Because it's
this,
subtle.
go ahead.
It's subtle. No, I was just gonna say, yeah, 'cause the way they communicate is subtle. It's not obvious. We're used to verbal language, and they're used to physical body language.
You know what's funny too that I noticed is it is subtle, but it's also like sometimes people are expecting human communication, and humans communicate in other ways. Like humans can also be like sneaky and can also like lie and so
Mhm.
a lot of times the dog looks at you real perfect. You ever been there? Like, you go to a friend's house and the dog's just staring right in their face, tail wagging, and they're like, what did you do? Like, why are you looking
Yeah.
at me all cute? And and it's a joke, but in certain circumstances, people don't quite get it, and they expect like treachery from a dog. That's just a very simple thing in its understandings of the world. So I bring that up to say a great way to build communication is to start setting these little like blueprints, and we do that in the form of obedience. Okay, so I was just
Right.
talking about this a little earlier. A dog a dog runs to the door and barks at the pizza man, and the owners are like, "No, no, don't do that, don't do that," and the dog has no idea what's happening. If you're
Like, don't
saying,
do that. So, yeah, they
yeah,
have
like,
no
"Don't
clue.
do what?" Or maybe the dog doesn't even know the word "no" because it hasn't been conditioned, but obedience could make all that simpler, because not only could you effectively teach a dog a verbal "no" or a verbal "out," let's say, but you could
Right.
also work toward avoiding the whole thing. You know what? Go to your crate. I know the pizza man's here. They text me when they're like outside, or go to place or lay down, or so you can give very specific, very simple guidelines that really help a dog along the way, especially when they're stuck, which is when dogs make mistakes anyway.
Right, right. And it's funny because through obedience, like we learn to kind of increase a dog's vocabulary. Learn how to not just speak with our words. We learn how to speak with our bodies. We learn how to speak with our gestures. We learn how to make it make sense to dogs. And then after a while, what ends up happening, our dogs get so fluent in the things that we're doing that we can just speak to them like, "Hey, go get your bone and bring it over here so I can throw it," and the dog knows exactly what that means,
Right.
right? So just to recap real quick, routine development and communication via obedience. So far, this is what we're talking about. One way that I like to break down routine development: put the dog in the right place at the right time to develop the right behaviors.
Hmm.
But that can also work in the opposite, right? You can put the dog in the wrong place at the wrong time to develop the wrong behaviors. So really figuring out what the right routine for your dogs are, as Mariano said earlier, is a very specific, subjective thing to you and your family and your dog's needs. So yeah, and communication, obedience, it's key. You have to. I would say 99.9% of dogs know how to sit on command.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's not just the sit, it's the development of everything else. All right. Thank you for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.